And
Welcome, Kevin, Karun. Karun Holsinger is a good friend of mine, has been for years, and he's going to tell us about the music that he's going to share with us on the 20th of August, but and also his own musical background. So, why don't you start off by telling us, what's your musical training? How did you come to music?
uh, well, music in general, I started back in school. So in what here in America we would call junior high school and then high school, I played saxophone, which I started because when we went to the band teacher with mom and she said, "Well, what instruments do you need?" And he said, "Well, trombone or saxophone." And I tried to reach trombone and my arm wasn't long enough, so I took up saxophone. And so I played that from, again, what we would call seventh grade until I graduated, and then went to college. I played saxophone a little bit more in college. When I graduated, I didn't do any music for several years because you would kind of need a group, a band to do saxophone. Um, at college, I met my wife, and she wound up playing the harp. She took it up in college. Well, several years later, I finally said, "Well, maybe that's interesting for me too." And I got into it, and that's really the backstory.
Well,
And
it's a
what
gorgeous.
really did it was I heard the sound of this particular harp.
Oh well, that's good segue. It's harp's a sort of fascinating instrument. It's a little unusual. It's got a very interesting history. I'd love you to introduce us to your harp and tell us a bit about it.
So harps do come in various sizes. They all have the general shape. I'll go ahead and move the camera slightly, right, of this thing we call the harmonic curve. But even that comes in different shapes depending on who built the harp. And unlike, for example, a violin, and everybody says, "Oh, Stradivarius is the best," there is no best harp sound. It's which one calls to you. And this one called to me. Um, this kind of harp is often called a lever harp or a Celtic harp or a folk harp because we play that kind of music. The reason it's called the lever harp, it may not show up real well on the video, but there are these black things that I can push up and down. And these are much like the way a guitarist would use a capo to change the pitches. So right now this string is a C sharp. If I put that lever down,
Oh, cool.
now it's a C natural.
So you can create different scales.
Yeah. So one of the advantages of a harp is that after I've set these levers, I can play in that key just fine. If I want to play in a different key, I put the levers down, well, rearrange them.
Mhm.
And then the fingering for, let's say, a D major scale, if I've set to be in D, is exactly the same as the fingering for a C major scale if I set the levers to be in C. Unlike
Okay.
on a piano, where I would
Oh yeah,
have to use different fingering because I have to get to the black keys,
yeah.
a harp, you kind of preset which black and white keys you want to use.
But actually, which is a bit ironic because every piano has a secret harp hidden inside it.
Yes, and in fact, it's called a harp.
Oh, I didn't even know that. I used to play the
Yeah,
piano.
but if you look at a grand piano, from the top, it's got this basic shape in it, and that is called the harp. But a piano is really a harp in a coffin. So,
Oh, that's harsh.
yeah. Now, one thing I touched on briefly that I talked about changing the pitch with these things I call lever. There are also harps that we usually call a pedal harp. I won't go into the details there other than say, yes, we have more than one harp in the house. And these big ones that would be more likely to see in an orchestra, you use pedals down by your feet. And then there's actually mechanical rods or cables going up the column here and twisting discs, and those things wind up changing the pitch of the string.
Yeah, your house is a veritable
Yeah.
harp menagerie.
Yep. And then
Okay.
there's even smaller ones.
Hey, the baby harp. This is what they start as and they grow into the big one. Is that right?
Not exactly.
Baby harp. Oh, okay.
Yeah. But anyway, so they come in different shapes and sizes, made from different woods. This one happens to have been made in England. This one was made in Washington State in the United States, and the other one was actually made in Italy.
Unfortunately, you're double booked, so you can't appear live on the Saturday concert, but you've given us a recording. What are we going to hear?
That one is one of my own compositions that I wrote several years ago now. I don't write a lot of music, but sometimes, something just comes out.
So what are you trying to express with your music? What do you feel? What do you want people to feel? Or what are you trying to induce?
Well, what I generally say is I try to touch people's hearts with my music. And that generally means not dance music, let's say. It generally means more calm and peaceful, and the melody is usually more important than the harmony. Maybe it's one way to say it.
Well, I've heard you play many times. It's a delight, and I'm looking forward to having more people hear it. So thank you so much for sharing your music with us.